Welcome back, everybody, to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this is the show where we explore what it means to be natural AF, what it means to connect with our natural identity and our true nature and our higher expressed nature. And I'm obsessed. I've been obsessed with self-development for a long time because I've seen some really profound changes in myself. Every time I learned something new, a little modality, whether it was the first time I came into contact with NLP, it was interesting to me that you could affect change and overcome obstacles through techniques that people know. There's so many different techniques, but some of them are better than others. And some of them I'm blown away with how it works, and it just mystifies me. And this episode is about PSYCH-K, and PSYCH-K is what's the word for it?
So it's a form of energy psychology.
Energy psychology is so interesting.
Works with the subconscious mind, and we actually communicate with the subconscious mind directly to help transform self-limiting beliefs and perceptions. So that's it in a nutshell. And we're interviewing Rosi Pletzer, who was my instructor. That's who I did all my training under. And she's amazing. She just lives and breathes not just the modality of PSYCH-K, but everything that it encompasses and the philosophy that's underpinning it. And she's just such a beautiful person. So I absolutely love this chat with her. And I love sharing it with, the world, really, because we touched on it at the end. It's almost like this hidden gem, I feel.
It really is.
Yeah. So,
and the key, I think, the reason it's so hidden, because my skeptical side would be like, well, if it's so good, how come Tony Robbins isn't teaching it, or how come so-and-so? Real healing only happens when you're willing and ready. And if you had everyone in a bucket and you're like, all right, how many in this bucket are actually willing and ready to do the change? Probably 1% are.
Yeah, well, we speak about this in the episode because I think Rosie made a comment about the PSYCH-K processes are quite easy and simple, but what's not easy is getting to that point where you want to make the change. For some people, it might take them 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years to get to the point to want to make the change. So that is the most crucial part of it. But then once you're there, PSYCH-K just provides this really simple, easy process for you to transform whatever it is that you're wanting to transform so that you can move towards the things that you truly desire. And like you said, move into that higher expression of yourself.
Yeah. So if you're ready to make the change, if it's been a decade or a day and you've had enough and you want to shift something, I'm a big fan of Robert Kiyosaki. Robert and Kim always say, for things to change, first I must change. And that came from a guy back in the day called Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller has written some interesting stuff, but that principle, he probably got it from some other, teacher or somebody that he was a fan of. But that principle is so true. For things to change, first I must change. And when I bring that up to people, that's the one that I get the most resistance back. Everybody wants to blame something or somebody else for their why they're stuck where they're at. And this is when that falls away. When you're ready to actually move forward and take full ownership and responsibility, this is a great way to do that. So before we get into the episode, just a little bit of housekeeping. So first of all, Isaac and I were super excited to join Leanne Lipinto on the Love Evolved podcast last week. So we'll link that in the show notes if you haven't heard it already. We had lots of fun. We had a really great conversation and we're already getting some really good feedback. And just, people really getting a lot just from us sharing our experience in our relationship and how we sort of operate. And that's always the goal. We just like to help inspire others to move into a more, cohesive and coherent. That's the word that we keep throwing around at the moment, which I love. It's like this more coherent way of being, not just with yourself, but also in partnership. Well, this show is sponsored by Natural Art Forum and it's supported by our listeners. And we've had some really good reviews and some amazing testimonials recently. And we're at the markets and we keep running into people that keep telling us about our deodorant, how wonderful it is. We've got a new scent that's up. This deodorant, the new one, has rosewood in it, which is amazing for sleep. I actually just take the oil and I drop it on my pillow when I'm feeling like I should have done that the other night. when I couldn't sleep. But I realized this is the only deodorant that, one, has this kind of magnesium in it and can also be used as a really high quality magnesium lotion. You can use it just the same way that you would a magnesium spray for sleep and relaxation. But it just also so happens that it reverses body odor, helps your body repel odor causing bacteria better. And
yeah, well, I even used the new scent for a headache. A friend of ours had just bought one and she just put some on, and we'd just gotten home. I'd been out all day and I had a bit of a headache, and I thought I could smell it from across the room. And I was like, this actually might help my headache, because it kind of felt like a tension stress headache. Yeah. And I just put it on under my arms as normal, because you've got quite a lot of lymphatics that run through there, and you're going to absorb quite a lot through there anyway. And then I just rubbed the excess on my forehead and around my head. And honestly, it was pretty instant. Like, I felt the relief instantly. So
when you said it works kind of like aromatherapy, because there is really high quality essential oils in it.
Yeah. So for anyone wanting to try our products, listeners of the show, you'll get 10% off your first order using the code NaturalAF10. So we've got the new deodorant up on the Australian site at the moment. The other scents of deodorant, we've got Alleviate and our Regenerate, Sunburn Recovery and Skin Repair. And for the States, we've just got Alleviate, but we are planning on bringing over the deodorants will be next for the States, which is super exciting.
As we're giving people simple, pure, and powerful alternatives to common products that are out there that are helpful, we just appreciate everyone's support. And it's been so awesome hearing back from you guys. Another way you can support us is by liking, sharing, or subscribing to this show, so that together we can change our lives, make the world a better place by becoming the best version of ourselves. And that's the mission of this show.
Yeah. And we just noticed that we've actually doubled our Spotify subscribers in the last month. So that's super exciting. So we love seeing that more people are listening and getting engaged. So it does make all the difference. So thank you to our listeners and the people that have been supporting us from the beginning. We greatly appreciate it. And without further ado,
let's get
we're going to get into the episode, and stay tuned for the wrap up, because after our interview with Rosi, Isaac and I are actually going to share some of our really profound experiences with PSYCH-K. We did give some examples during the episode, but
I've had a recent one that was really, really interesting. So stay tuned for that.
All right. Enjoy. Coming from a health-based career, Rosi found herself on a more spiritual path when her personal life reached what she calls an implosion point. Finding herself in a situation where she was no longer coping, she found the methodology of PSYCH-K through Dr. Bruce Lipton. She was certified as an instructor 10 years ago by the originator of PSYCH-K, Rob Williams, who sadly passed away recently. She now travels the world sharing this simple, fast, and effective means to achieving the peace we seek. Rosi is invested and committed to personal and global evolution through becoming the best versions of ourselves within each moment and situation. She is an example of what she teaches and shares, remaining on her personal evolutionary journey of life and continuing to embrace the growth opportunities that come her way. A long way from perfect, Rosi is authentic and generous with her passion for sharing the how-to for subconscious change. She enriches the learning experience with real examples and experiences and always invites questions for clarification. Rosi's dream and passion is to teach people how to align all three aspects of the mind, the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious. By aligning all three aspects of the mind, we create a harmony that encourages peace, flow, and expansion. Thanks so much for being with us today, Rosi.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we've been so excited to get you on. I've obviously done my PSYCH-K trainings with you. I've shared that on the podcast before, that I'm a facilitator. Isaac's like my number one client.
I'm so fascinated with this modality, and I can't wait to hear more of your story and some of the breakthroughs that you've seen, and to help broadcast this to the rest of the world, because I just think it's so interesting and useful. And
Yeah. So let's kick it off with a little bit more about your journey, Rosi. So if you want to share that we kind of touched on it in your intro, but some of your most significant life experiences that have led you to where you are today and the work that you do now with PSYCH-K.
Yeah, cool. So I never thought I was going to become a PSYCH-K instructor. It wasn't on my career path journey. I didn't even really know what PSYCH-K was until, as I said in my intro, life hit a bit of an implosion point. My career was good. I was in the health industry or wellness industry for basically since I left school in one shape or form, from nursing through naturopathy to environmental medicine. And that was kind of my thing. And I was successful at it. So that was my career path. And then my life got a bit messy, mainly in terms of family and relationship. So my partner at the time became quite aggressive and violent through a disease process, and my kids weren't coping. I wasn't coping. It was messy, and I ended up on a cruise to try to sort myself out. And on that cruise was a fellow called Bruce Lipton and his wife Margaret and a few other people.
Oh, wow.
So, the universe was smiling, and
Absolutely.
I got to ask Bruce and Margaret how they did life so in such a heart-based, kind, compassionate, calm. All the stuff that you see on YouTube with Bruce is very real. So it was palpable, and I was really interested in how they managed to do life so elegantly and with such love. So Bruce shared that if it hadn't been PSYCH-K, he doesn't think he would be doing life that way, and that there was a before PSYCH-K version of Bruce and a post PSYCH-K version of Bruce. So I thought if it was good enough for Bruce, it was probably good enough for me as well. So I got myself to a PSYCH-K workshop and brought it home and really worked with it for myself, to cope with the situation that I was in, to make big decisions, which I wasn't that good at that time. There was a lot of limiting beliefs. I didn't like saying no to people. I was a bit of a people pleaser. There were a lot of limiting subconscious programs that were preventing me from really moving forward and moving beyond the situation I was in. And it started making a difference. My middle son at the time decided he wanted to do PSYCH-K as well. So I went and did the workshop a second time. And that was really good for me, because I think the first time I was so in my situation that I hadn't really seen the breadth of what you could use PSYCH-K for and with in life. I call it the Swiss Army knife for life. I think it's your multiple tool set. You can use it to meet any of life's belief system challenges, which is nearly every area of life. Whenever you're stressed, you can pull it out and use it to transform the perception of stress to a state of peace. And from that more peaceful state, then you can decide how you would like it to be instead, and start installing those supportive and enhancing beliefs and perceptions that are going to help you elevate or expand yourself to a new version of reality. It's not a magic wand. We take action as well. So we create the subconscious potential, and then we add in a little bit of conscious action, and that really propels us towards creating, the life that we're wanting to live, rather than the programs that we react with. Yeah. So that was my journey. Then obviously I loved it so much I wanted to share it with other people, and embarked on the instructor training journey. Yeah.
So how long had you been, like, from when you were introduced to PSYCH-K to when you went on to do your instructor training? Like, what was the time frame?
Yeah, 2 to 3 years. So I'd been doing PSYCH-K for a couple of years, and then really more and more I was wanting to do PSYCH-K with people. And for me, I love teaching, I love sharing, I love the one-to-many aspect. I was doing a lot of one-to-one sessions and facilitating with people, but it was becoming more and more of what I wanted to do in life. So it became a natural, organic flow to start the instructor training journey, which wasn't immediate. It takes a fair bit of it is a journey in itself. You kind of have to walk your talk first, and then go the next step. And it has to be a reciprocal fit, really. So So I think it unfolds very naturally, that step.
Yeah. And having trained under you, I can say you were like born to be doing what you're doing. Like, you're just such an amazing instructor. And actually, and I wanted to ask, did you integrate it with your, like, the practice you were in first? Because obviously, in my experience and meeting lots of people at the workshops, that's what they kind of do with PSYCH-K, is that they then kind of take it and integrate it with the work that they do with people.
Yeah, it's exactly what I did. I really, more and more, I was wanting to work with the subconscious limitations that I could hear. I could hear people say them. I was in a consultation and I would hear them talk, and I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, there you've just said a limiting belief. It's come straight out of your mouth. We often say what we're thinking, and when we're listening, it's really easy to see from an objective point of view in somebody else. What their limitations are. So more and more I was wanting to offer, we have this other thing that we can do that I can help you change subconscious beliefs that might then help you accelerate your health journey as well. You still need, still obviously need to take the action steps of whatever healthcare you think is going to help you. But if you don't have that, the mind doctor on board as well, then it's very hard for you to reach those health outcomes. So if you can harness the two, it's so much more effective. So yes, more and more I wanted to integrate it into the clinic space and offer that, and I did. So as well as doing it, we can do PSYCH-K online as well. So I was doing online sessions with people from different countries, and it's a really beautiful. It's a really beautiful space to sit in and offer. As a facilitator, I think it's the best job in the world. Yeah.
I agree. I 100% agree. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could give a little more of a background on where PSYCH-K originated from and sort of the story about the beginnings of it.
Sure. So the fellow that originated PSYCH-K is a fellow called Rob Williams. He left school, more became a corporate life, and then he became very disillusioned with the corporate world and ended up gravitating to something that he perceived to be more of service, and went into psychoanalysis and psychotherapy and enjoyed the service aspect of that, but his corporate self got a little bit frustrated with how long it was taking to help himself and others to change. And then he gravitated towards the energy psychology of the day. So there were the things like EFT was coming up, and NLP was being birthed, and educational kinesiology. So we call these energy psychologies. And he gravitated to those and he enjoyed them for sure, but wasn't 100% convinced. And in a moment of great frustration, he actually recalls that PSYCH-K was birthed kind of through him. So he doesn't call him the inventor of PSYCH-K, or he calls himself the originator of PSYCH-K. It originated through him. And he really basically downloaded the what we call balance processes, the processes that we use in PSYCH-K to create the change, and then started using them in his life, started noticing the results, and then started using them with clients, and really the word got out. He was a way to achieve rapid change. Like that might have taken 2 years, maybe in a couple of sessions instead. So people started talking, and it became more and more popular, and he couldn't keep up with the demand. He started being asked to talk about it worldwide, so he became an international speaker, which is how he met Bruce Lipton. They kind of became the dynamic duo. Bruce would talk about the biology of beliefs, and Rob would say, and now here's how you can change them. And then Rob realized that he couldn't teach everybody how to do it himself. So he taught the first instructor cohort how to teach PSYCH-K. And now there are around 30 instructors in the world. It's been translated into many languages, and we teach in many, many countries. Rob has an amazing integrity, and he really kept PSYCH-K as a methodology so that everybody who learns it is going to learn it the same way. It's like a well-worn energy form, and it's I just can't believe how forward thinking that this man was. You know, he really, I think, had seen other things go scattergun and really wanted to keep this integrity and make sure that everybody who learns it is going to benefit from it in the purest sense. And that's what happens even today. We teach it the same around the world. We're in a collaborative space. There's not a competitive space within the instructor cohort. We're very collaborative. It's like a family. So it's actually a really beautiful space to work from. We work independently, but we're very much part of a family. Yeah.
And can I ask, Rosie, was Rob's passing a shock to people? It was certainly a shock to me when I first saw, because it was a month or so ago now. And I've got to say, I was my first thought was, I'm never going to meet him and train under him. Like, because I remember when I did my first couple of trainings, I was like, I might become an instructor one day, many years down the road. And I just kind of always assumed, because you'd done your training and met him, I just always assumed that I'd meet him one day. So I was kind of like, oh no.
Yeah, I think it was a shock for sure. And yet, it absolutely was how it was. And knowing Rob and how he is, it would have been in part chosen at the end of the day. And I think absolutely watch the video. There's some beautiful interview series videos on my website and other people's websites, and you get to know a little bit about Rob and of Rob through those videos. I will miss looking into his eyes and having a big, Rob hug for sure. But I still feel him so very close. I feel like Rob's business is not finished. He's continuing it on and really supportive in the field. I've had other people that have recounted, that closeness of feeling as well. So, yeah, and we have an amazing, Ray's, Rob's wife, is still very active in the community, and Duccio, our director of PSYCH-K, is awesome. So, he's filling those shoes very elegantly. He's an amazing person as well, very inspirational. And Duccio teaches the health and wellbeing program as well, so people get to know him through the health and wellbeing program, and also as the director of PSYCH-K now.
I'm tearing up just
it was a surprise to me too.
Yeah, I'm tearing up just hearing you talk about him, because you've always spoken so highly of him. I think everyone does that knows him. I actually often send one of the videos I often send people that inquire with me is the video of how Bruce and Rob met.
Yes.
And yeah, like you can tell they were the dynamic duo. You can kind of see just their personalities, how they would bounce off each other. And it's such it's sad that he's passed, but what a beautiful thing to give to the world and to leave us with.
An amazing legacy, really.
Yeah. Such a beautiful gift to the world.
He certainly made some change. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he did.
And it's thinking generationally, the impact that it's going to have, and the way that he's, like you said, he had the forethought to put it down in a repeatable system that's, it's very effective, and I could see it having a very long-standing place in the world and a growing importance as these energy things. I think there was a time like in the 70s and 80s where these things were kind of coming out that, I missed it. Like I grew up in the 80s, my family was in a different realm, but these things I feel like they're coming back now, not like out of necessity, but there's this growing understanding of how important the subconscious mind actually is, and that you can actually do something about it. And the fact that you can work with it so quickly with PSYCH-K, I think, is completely different from so many other modalities. Yeah.
Yeah, really. I think people are starting to realize we've all got a subconscious mind. And
Yeah.
unless we've had the ideal childhood, and even then, many of our subconscious beliefs and perceptions are limiting. I think science has said up to 70% of subconscious beliefs and perceptions are limiting beliefs, which is, gives us plenty of
Yeah.
stuff to work with throughout
Why
life.
do you think that is? Yeah, because I would tend to agree. Why do you think so much of it is limiting?
Yeah, I think because it's the nature of culture. We've been brought into a world that's already limiting. We outsource a lot of our personal power. Even in the schooling system, in the medical system, we kind of see the power as external to ourselves. And I think that's a huge limitation. I think just as we're growing up, our parents are trying to keep us safe. And a lot of that can be verbally and non-verbally taken by us as children as don't do this and don't do that, and it's dangerous to do this and it's unsafe to do that, which might be quite effective when we're two. But now that we're able to look after ourselves, maybe we don't need those same limitations. Don't run out on the road, don't talk to strangers, all the negatives. Plus, a lot of the literature, a lot of the media nowadays, social media and news,
Yeah.
also add to that limitation. There's so much negative speak, and add to that, the subconscious mind is there to keep us safe also. So we're geared to that safety net, or the primal needs, if you like. So once we feel safe and secure, it's a lot easier to build supportive, enhancing, growth, expansion kind of beliefs. But in those early days, not so much. So I think we're a product of the Western world, and I think the Western world is, from my perception and from my beliefs, I think it's a very odd place. It's a very odd way to live. So I think we're
We
living
agree.
we live in a very weird way when you take when you really take an objective look at it, it can seem quite strange. Yeah.
Yeah, and like Isaac said, I think that's why this is so needed, especially at this time that we're going through currently, because after what happened over the last 4 or 5 years, however long it's been now, so many people have woken up to this reality that we've been very conditioned out of the way that we're actually designed to live life, and to be more expansive and come really take back our power and live from that power. And I think that's part of the reason I fell in love with PSYCH-K. I think initially it was like, yeah, I think at first I wanted to integrate it with my work. I studied as a nutritionist, and I think with most modalities, because having gone through the workshops, you see people from a whole array of different fields that they work in. And a lot of the time when you're working with people, it's the blocks that are coming up, or the challenges you face with meeting positive outcomes, it's all internal, and it all stems from these limiting beliefs. But then the more I learned about it, I was just like, wow, this. And the more I did it, doing the workshops, it really does, when you actually see in the physical reality your life change, it's like, well, it just unlocks a whole different world. And you kind of see, like, this is how we're meant to live.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just cleaning the filters, isn't it? It's just keeping on cleaning those filters. I think it's getting rid of everything that's not us. That's how I see PSYCH-K. It's just helping really remove the things that aren't, um, really simple beliefs like I love myself. I think a lot of people fail those beliefs when we test. We use muscle testing, and when we do the muscle testing, a lot of people fail that test, the muscle test of belief. So there's not many people who even have the innate belief that they're lovable, to themselves. And
Yeah.
I am safe is another one that many people fail. And if we don't have these very simple but very profound and important beliefs in place, then we start behaving in ways that aren't free, that aren't helping propel us to how we want to live life. We're going to be holding ourselves back in some way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's.
And I've had people ask me.
Yeah,
just a quick question on the muscle testing. I've had people ask me, is it the same as kinesiology? Is that what the K stands for in PSYCH-K? Is it kinesiology or? Oh, okay.
It's
What is
fun.
it?
It's a good question because I get asked that a lot too. Yeah. The K stands for the key. So it's the key to your psyche. How awesome is that?
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Rob is the first person to say there's no magic in PSYCH-K. The magic is in us. And PSYCH-K is just used as a key to unlocking that potential and that power.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if, for those that aren't familiar with PSYCH-K and like the balances, like, is there a little bit more we can get into on how it's tested for, like, or when you test a belief and then why you can change the belief so quickly?
Yeah. Yeah. So we use muscle testing. So kinesiology uses muscle testing also. But PSYCH-K, we use muscle testing in a very simplistic way. So we have a specific posture and a position and a procedure that we use that is vital to get the accurate responses because we're dealing directly with the subconscious part of the mind. So we set that up. And then we can find out, or we can communicate with the subconscious part of the mind to find out what we do believe, what we don't believe. So we need to find out what the limiting belief is in a certain way, or we need to at least muscle test what we do want and see if we believe that or not. So we can then go forward. If we don't believe a statement or a belief like I love myself, and if we fail the muscle testing on that, then we're going to go ahead and create that new belief at the subconscious part of the mind. And because we're dealing direct with the subconscious, it means that as we install this new belief, I love myself, we're really not just changing one belief, we're really changing everything in opposition to that belief. So it's very effective. It's one to many. It's not linear. So that subconscious aspect of the mind has got 40 million bits per second processing capacity. It can process a lot of information, which is mind-boggling to the conscious mind because we've only got 40 bits per second processing capacity consciously. So to try to understand the processing capacity of the subconscious with the conscious is a bit like trying to figure out quantum physics. It's really hard.
Right. Yeah, it's like faster than instance.
Yeah, it's crazy fast, and it's very effective. We call it sustainable change too because we're creating a change that is sustainable moving forwards. We don't call it permanent change because other things can change the subconscious part of the mind. PSYCH-K is not the only way to change subconscious beliefs. Trauma, for example, will change the subconscious, not to a positive state, but it will change the subconscious. So we call it sustainable change. We create something called a whole brain state in the PSYCH-K processes so that the balances that we use, they are processes of change and their methodologies, they step through a certain procedure that guarantees the effectiveness because we're really making sure with every step that it's going to be okay to do it. It's going to be safe to create the change. And then we're going to make sure that the subconscious can create the change before we even go ahead and create what we call the whole brain state, which is an ideal state in which to share those new beliefs and install those new beliefs and perceptions with the subconscious part of the mind. Yeah. So really it's the whole methodology that creates the change. Every step is super important. It's simple, it's deceptively simple, but it's very effective. Yeah. And I wouldn't call it easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what blows a lot of people away the first time they do PSYCH-K is how quickly it actually works. And I often give people the example that you shared in one of the workshops with a client that you had that had like 20 years of trauma and came out as a refugee, and she balanced in 30 minutes. She like transformed this, transformed this trauma into being able to move forward with her life. And I just think that's so incredible. And what you said just before too, when I first learned that in my first workshop about the difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind and the processing times, it just, the penny dropped when I was like, this is why affirmations don't work, because a lot of people do that, every morning they say, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. And they do it every day for how long? And it just doesn't get deep enough. And it makes sense too, how people often, myself included, find it very hard to, when they're trying to make changes, stick to things based off of sheer motivation and willpower. It just doesn't, it just doesn't get you far enough.
Wow.
Hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to backtrack a little bit, just because we touched on the ways in which we're sort of conditioned throughout life. But if you could go more into sort of how we develop those beliefs over time and sort of how our mind develops, from birth and childhood up into adulthood, because I think that's really important for people to understand that concept, because a lot of people, before I learned PSYCH-K, I had no idea that was how our mind develops. So if you could explain that.
It's fascinating, and I think it's really good to understand, because a lot of people will judge themselves for what they believe and what they don't believe, or they'll judge themselves for their programs, subconscious programs. Once you know how we download those programs or how we take them on, you realize you cannot judge yourself at all, because some of them aren't even yours. So I think it's really nice to take that load off and not have any blame or guilt or shame about what we believe. Just know that once we know something like PSYCH-K, we can get in and change them, and that's where the power is. So not sort of staying in the, oh my gosh, this is where I am. It's like, wow, now I can do something about it. Because we develop beliefs even in utero. So even before we're born, we're developing a stress response. I was lucky enough to be with Bruce Lipton in Copenhagen this year, and he showed a beautiful video of a fetus responding to arguments around it on an ultrasound. So, we're responding to stresses even in utero. Yeah. We can't be held responsible for that. We've done generational studies where say something happened to a forebear that was quite a trauma and a stress, we can inherit that same stress response to that same situation, even though we haven't physically lived it. Isn't that amazing? Our stress response and trauma response can be inherited. I think that's crazy.
That's so
and then
critical.
We have, it's huge. And then we have the first couple of years we're really not, don't have a conscious filter. We're really just taking things in as if it's absolute truth. And as we know, there aren't many absolute truths in the world, but we take them on as if they are absolute truths. And we take them in through our senses, through what we see, through what we hear, through what we feel, smell, taste, and we take them in that perceptual moment. So you might have 4 children in the same family live the same event, but each will have a different memory of the same event because they've all taken it on a little bit differently. So I might come home and I might be super excited. I might have drawn a really cool painting and I want to show my mum, and my mum might have had a really bad day and she's busy and she might just look at me and go, not now. And in that moment, I might go, oh my gosh, my art is crap and my mum doesn't like me. She hasn't got time for me. So I've all of a sudden created this whole story as subconscious beliefs and perceptions when it's not actually the case. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
is that first 7 years of life, really. And then what really surprised me was that from 7 to 13, we still don't have critical thinking up and running. We don't have a fully fledged conscious filter. So we're highly suggestible for those years. So that's really key, because we're in the playground, we have other kids telling us stuff, we're highly suggestible. We go and watch a movie, or we play these video games that are like war games, or we read
Sure.
books. I remember one of my kids got terrified from spiders watching the Harry Potter movie. As a mum, I thought it was fine to take my kids to that
Yeah.
sort of a movie, but they're highly suggestible.
Yeah.
So really, that first 13 years of life, we're sponges, and we just take in information without that critical thinking, without a really aware conscious filter.
Yeah.
So we're a product of that, and look at the culture that we're brought up in. We look at the things we hear on the news and hear the other people saying. So we're also a product of the culture that we're born in, not just the family, but the village. And our village is quite big these days. And
Yeah.
social media. So there's a lot impacting beliefs and perceptions in those early years.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I think that's why it's so important to understand this stuff, because I think when you do have the awareness of that, you can actually see, it's much easier to see in the world and how it operates, certain agendas and things that are pushed. You can see, especially now, I think a lot of people can see there's a lot of stuff targeted towards children. And I think that's why I think it's done purposely, because they are so suggestible and they're taking in all this stuff. And, it is a little bit scary sometimes to think, this is the first generation of kids that have been born into a world with, the internet and technology and social media and all of these things. And we actually don't know the long-term effects of that. And again, that's why I think a modality like PSYCH-K is so beneficial in these times, because I think it takes away any fear. Like, I know that before I came to PSYCH-K, was kind of like, oh my God, how do we undo all this? Like, how do we, and especially parents are always so worried that they're going to mess up their children. And, so I think it's a very practical, it's a very easy, simple process that can undo things literally in a matter of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah, I
that can
think
sound too good to be true for some, but do you have some stories where you can kind of show, like, just explain why, like, yeah, it does work this quickly? Look at what happened to, X person or something. Like, do you have some other examples?
Yeah, I think, just as you were saying, it can happen in 5 minutes. I just got this insight that the methodology works in 5 minutes, but getting the person to want to change didn't take 5 minutes. So that
Absolutely.
person getting to the point where they thought, right, I really want to change this, to get the awareness that there was something that they wanted to change, and then to find the methodology and then to change it. I guess that's a whole backstory, isn't it? So I think, I guess that's why I say, but it's not easy. It's simple and it's fast, but it's not easy, because I think it takes tremendous courage and to face ourselves and go, oh my gosh, I want to create the change. I think we have to get there first, and that's the hardest step. I think once we're there, that's why it's so easy and fast. We finally got ourselves there. So
Yeah.
the backstory to that, it took me 50 years to get there, so it wasn't the 5 minutes. But once I got there, I started getting busy. So I
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
getting the
Great point.
changes
Yeah.
happening. So I think that's also why it's so effective, because people that find PSYCH-K, or PSYCH-K finds them, or a bit of both, I think it's at that crucial time in their life that they're finally putting their hand up to go, I need to change myself. Nobody else can do it for me. Actually, it's my subconscious mind, and I need to get busy on creating that change. And then there's this beautiful gift that shows up in the life that goes, and here's a fast now that you've realised you've got to do it, here's a fast way to do it. So I think the backstory is that it's taken time to get there, and the fact that we're putting our foot into the ring, we're putting our hand up for the change with PSYCH-K. Nobody else is doing it for us. A facilitator is certainly guiding us through it for sure, but it's as the person creating the change, we're doing it. And I think that's why it's so effective too. You're not relying on somebody else. You actually got both fed in. You're doing it. So it's effective for that. It's also effective because it's this proven methodology. When it first started, it would take 15 to 20 minutes for a balance to work. And I think because it's been really honoured and kept in integrity, it's just faster and faster now for the people that are learning it now. They're coming into a really beautiful thought form that's been enriched by the people before them. So it's taking less and less time for the people to do the balances, which is awesome. I think honestly it's the methodology that steps us into it that creates the effectiveness and the ease and the rapid way. We're dealing directly with the subconscious mind, so we're utilising that 40 million bits per second. So it is fast. And it's attracting people that are ready for the change. Yeah. You can't do PSYCH-K on anybody. It's to do with process. So isn't it interesting? We can't fix anybody. I love that about PSYCH-K too.
Same here. And like you said earlier too, because we've grown up in a world that's all about outsourcing our power. So that's, I think, what really spoke to me with PSYCH-K as well, and working with other people, is that they're not reliant on me to do something for them to get the change. It, like you said, it's just a facilitation. I'm just there to basically translate the methodology into a way that they can do it and understand it and make it really easy for them just to do that process. And then they can see me as little or as often as they like, which I also love, because I think, especially in the health world, I think some practitioners kind of maybe gear their clients a little towards needing them and needing regular sessions. And I'm sure for some modalities that's necessary, but I've never really been into that because I don't want to continue that paradigm of making people reliant on something or someone else.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I love PSYCH-K as well. And Rosie, if you can go more into, because you did touch on the whole brain state, because as you were talking to, I just wanted to bring up, it reminded me too that sometimes during balances, like emotions and stuff can come up. But if you can talk about, just go into more of the whole brain state and what happens and what happens when we're not in that whole brain state. And sometimes we can over-identify with a hemisphere of the brain, and and then why the whole brain state is so important to the PSYCH-K process.
Yeah, the whole brain state is our birthright. So it's kind of, when we talk about how we should be living and how we're living at the moment, there's a vast difference between the two. I think we live in a very left brain society. We put a lot of value on logic and reason and academia. We've kind of lost that balance between the left and the right hemispheres. So we've got two hemispheres of the cerebral cortex. One's the left, one's the right. And they process different kinds of information. So the left is more logical, rational, the right is more creative, emotional. And they both serve a purpose. So if you can imagine being in any situation and having access to both hemispheres at the same time, then you can utilize both functions of the hemispheres towards that situation. Whereas if you over-identify to one hemisphere over the other, you're limiting your potential. Your response potential is limited. If you've got both hemispheres active in response to a situation, you've got your full response potential. You're responding to your capacity, your to potential, which is amazing. I call it a superpower. I think the other thing, that being whole-brained, you're open to possibilities that maybe you can't even grasp if you're over-identifying to one hemisphere. I share this example in the workshop. I had a car accident in my early 20s on a dirt road, and I did a lot of damage to my physical body in the car accident. So it left me with an over-identifying to the right hemisphere, which is the creative emotional state. So as soon as I'd come up to a dirt road, I would feel myself over-identifying, and it's uncontrollable. It's subconscious. It's going at 40 million bits per second. So I could feel myself become an emotional wreck. I would slow down to like 20 kilometers an hour. My vision got worse, and I would start sweating and getting emotional. So I was over-identifying to the right hemisphere just because it was a dirt road. So which from a logical, rational point of view is ridiculous. But in my reality, it was very real. And then when I learned PSYCH-K, I was able to create a whole brain state when I'm now looking at the dirt roads, and also then create a belief that I'm just as good a driver on a dirt road as I am on a tar road, So really, really created a whole new reality for myself. And that's the power of PSYCH-K. You can really create that whole brain state, and then also create a new belief that's going to support your future reality in regards to that situation. So a whole brain state also reduces any unwanted stress. So, if we're stressed, we tend to over-identify to one hemisphere over the other, depending on what the situation is and depending on our past experiences. I say that they distort our perceptual filters. Yeah. So we have this distorted perception of the world. So we're just putting the windscreen wipers on and clearing off the distortion and being able to see clearly using our logic and reason and our creativity and our emotions and our intuition. So putting them all into the mix. And it really is. It's a beautiful way to live. And the more we do PSYCH-K, the more we balance for, the more we're cleaning off those filters. And you'll find the less things bother you, the less things you react to. So it affects every situation in your life. You just, it is such a gift. It is really such a gift. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you become
one of the things
responsive.
I've noticed,
Yeah,
is how important it is for the questions, like for this, let's say you're shifting an unconscious belief, you speak to it in the positive, and it can be quite a process for me sometimes. And Lex is really good at helping me simplify what I'm trying to say to my subconscious brain into like a very simple statement.
Yeah.
And that process alone, when you crystallize down what it is you actually want, to get clarity on that, and then speak it and then integrate it, that is just, I don't know, it's the best thing ever, because you can use it for beliefs around money. You can use it for beliefs around your physical capabilities, around your memory, around all these different things.
Anything and everything, literally.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's limitless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, while we're on that, do you want to share something, like what is possible with PSYCH-K? Because I remember you sharing something about someone maybe that went through the health and wellbeing retreat and he grew his finger back using PSYCH-K. Like there's some pretty amazing stories.
So Duccio Liccardi, who's our director of PSYCH-K, sliced some of his thumb off. And he took good care of it as well, but created all the subconscious enhancing beliefs to really, and including the fingerprint. So really phenomenal what you can do. I've done some, honestly, I think what you can imagine, start with what you can imagine, because we're taught we can't do a lot of things. And PSYCH-K has really gotten me to the point now where I really question reality. Like, is that real, or is there somebody out in the world doing that? Because if there's somebody else out in the world doing that, they're showing me that I can do that too.
Yes.
Because it's possible. So I think that's where I'm living from now, is like, I try not to say you can't do this or you can't do that, because actually, people have shown me working with other people has been such a gift for me too. I've got a dear friend whose two sons had nut allergies and anaphylactic nut allergies. And he was going through the health and wellbeing, and he said, I'm going to, work with this nut allergies. And the medical part of me is going, oh, don't go there,
Yeah.
And I'm glad he didn't listen. Like, I didn't say that, but inside I was having the disbelief. So my subconscious was certainly believing that was not possible, and it was possible. His kids are fine with nuts now.
Wow.
It's
That's amazing.
cool, I did some bad damage to my hand. I was with my son and a girlfriend and moving furniture, and I got my hand caught in the lock and it sliced a big chunk out, and it was nasty and it was painful, and I cleaned it up first, and then we can transform the perception of stress using PSYCH-K. So that was my first aid thing, was to transform because it was really painful. I was transforming the perception of stress, and really the pain dialed down within 2 minutes. It went from a 8 out of 10 to a 1 out of 10, even if that.
Yeah.
And it was the difference between me thinking I should go to hospital and have stitches to going, oh, actually, I wonder if it'll just grow back, but it'll heal up by itself. And within 3 days, it had totally gone together, and there was just a tiny little scar, but not even a scar now. It's phenomenal stuff that I would not have believed even 7 years ago, that I'm now believing, just because I'm working with it and doing it and living those experiences. So I'm expanding all the time. I'm a work in progress. I'm learning from other people. I learn from everybody I facilitate with. People are doing amazing things around the world. So
yeah. You actually just reminded me, Rosie, of a story. I often forget about this, but it was one of those experiences, one of my more profound experiences with PSYCH-K. And again, it was that's why I forget about it, because it was so quick and it was simple. But the way, so when we were in the States traveling, we road tripped from Wyoming down to California. And I think we'd stopped in Monument Valley and we'd stayed the night there. And I woke up in the morning and I could feel like the beginning of a UTI coming on. And I started freaking out because I was like, I'm in another country. I'm not going to go to a hospital here. Not that I would anyway, but normally, like, the things I would normally turn to, which is like homeopathy and all my natural things, like I didn't have on the road. And I was kind of freaking out, and, because I like to be as natural as possible. Obviously there's a time and a place for medicine, but anyway, I got myself into a bit of a state, and I said to Isaac, let's just go. There was because we're in the middle of nowhere too. Monument Valley is just you're in the desert basically with all these rock formations, and there was literally the place where we stayed and then a little convenience store and a petrol station. That was it. And I said, let's just go to the convenience store and I'll just get some cranberry juice. That was all I could think to do. So we found the cranberry juice, and even then, the food in America, there was red dye number 40 and the blue dye number 2, all these things and tons of sugar and just nothing I would normally take or use or drink. So I was like, just get the cranberry juice. And I found some medication for not incontinence, or it was something to do with that. I said, this might help. And again, even the medications had the red dyes and the blue dyes in them. And anyway, so we got in the car and I was like, I did the transform perception of stress because I was in such a state over it. I did the TPS. I took one tablet out. I actually blessed it, and I just blessed that it would do no harm. It just would help and do what it needed to do. I took one. I blessed the bottle of cranberry juice that it would cause no harm to my body. And an hour later, the symptoms completely went away, completely went away. And I was like, whoa, that it works. But even when you have these experiences, I was like, whoa, that was pretty cool.
It's incredible, isn't it? It really is. I think because it's so fast, and because you're creating the change at the subconscious mind, that the conscious mind sometimes doesn't validate the change.
Right.
It's almost been too easy, and sometimes we don't believe it can be that simple and it can be that fast. So we don't believe that it can be that simple and easy. So we kind of don't validate it sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, and I have a story too. When I came over here for the first time last August, we went to a swimming hole where there's a place you can jump off the rocks and, into the water, and it's quite high. And I'm like, oh, it'll be no problem. I haven't done a lot of stuff in the water. Like I taught myself how to swim in my 20s, my late 20s. And, but I, didn't grow up in a big pool. I grew up in Wyoming, like in the middle of a grassy prairie, no real big lakes or, coastal access or anything. Anyways, I was going to jump off the water into this pool, and I started getting this this fear response that I was not really used to, because I was in the Army. I used to jump out of planes. I've, done that a bunch of times, but I was like, for some reason, like I'm just getting this real hesitant, so I was like, let's try it out. Let's try PSYCH-K. I think it was probably the first time that I'd tried it. And
I think we'd done a session online. It was your first time I did it with you in person.
Yeah. And so we sit down, we balanced about transform the perception of stress about just taking the jump off. It was very quick to integrate it.
Yeah.
And then I stood up and I walked, right off the edge and jumped into the water with no hesitation at all. Cause I kept stopping. I was tried 3 or 4 times. And then after PSYCH-K, no hesitation. And it was fun. And I was like, there's so many things I could use that for. This was just a fun little test. But we've gone on since to use it for perceptions around money and beliefs, and because it was it's very big challenge leaving one country and coming to another, and starting a business and all this stuff. It's just been so good to have a facilitator living in the house.
It's handy, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Rosie, I also want to address something just for people that hear this stuff and might think it's a bit woo-woo, or, they don't really get it. I mean, anyone that knows Dr. Bruce Lipton, the fact that he's so involved with PSYCH-K kind of speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. But for people that, are a bit skeptical about, how it works, do you want to go into a little bit of the studies that are actually done around PSYCH-K and the brain function and what actually happens during or before, during and after balancing and going through the processes?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of where science meets spirituality in a way. So, there is that spirituality component. Rob calls it a spiritual process with psychological benefits. Mm-hmm. We're inviting the greater aspect of mind into the equation. We call that the superconscious part of the mind, but it is the spiritual part of the mind too. So, so people can think it's when they hear that, they can go, oh, woo-woo. But I come from a very science-based background. So for me, it was the science is quite persuasive. There's a lot of science around muscle testing that will, if we put you in a controlled study and put a weighted amount on the arm with a very set procedure and process, you will get up to 13% reduction in muscle strength. So muscle testing has got quite a lot of research and studies done around it. As for the processes, we've done things like EEGs to show that we can create a whole brain state, and they're up on the PSYCH-K International website. You can find those studies under the FAQs if you wanted to look at them, which is awesome. I think that's really nice for people with a bit of a science bent to, it does happen. There's some beautiful studies showing brain mapping that you can see within the 2 to 5 minutes that the brain will create the whole brain state. So it's the mind's response through the brain. Yeah, so we can look at the brain and see what the mind's doing through that. So we do create that whole brain state, which is pretty magical. To create that whole brain state, we have to let go of the over-identification that was there beforehand. And then we can show that it moves even from a whole brain state through to acceptance or to something even more, so to more going towards that which we were not going, for example, spiders, instead of going from away from spiders, become whole-brained and then moving even towards spiders. So really such a different outcome. We learn something called surrogation in the workshops after the basics. So in the advanced integration workshop and in the master facilitation workshop, we learn something called surrogation, which is where we can do Psych-K at a distance, you know, and that can really blow people's minds. It's like, how can you do it from the other side of a phone, or how can you do it from the other side of the world with somebody else? And those studies are amazing. That they were done with Rob Williams and Jeffrey Fannin, who's a neuroscientist who now works with Joe Dispenza. But yeah, Jeffrey Fannin and Rob did some beautiful studies where they showed the printout of the brain and the electrical activity in the brain changing with Rob going to surrogations consecutively with different people. So you could see that from a science point of view, there was no other explanation except this does work.
Wow.
You know, that we are all connected. You know, Rob has this beautiful saying that the world, probably the biggest dis-ease or disorder in the world, is something called the illusion of separation. We all think we're separate from each other and everything and from nature, and we would not do things to each other if we recognize that actually we're all connected. So it's an optical delusion that we are separate. And I think this beautiful process of surrogation and the science behind that shows that we're all interconnected. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I couldn't believe that when I first experienced the surrogation for myself. And I've gotten over the past couple of years, especially more in tune with my body and with feelings and sensations as it relates to emotion. And you can definitely feel a difference when when a facilitator puts you in surrogation with someone else.
Yeah.
You can feel the energy shift, and it's immediate.
Yeah.
And
and even
I don't know why that works or how that works, but it just
and even just
does.
with nature, because I remember you sharing the story, Rosie, about going to surrogation with a tree and then just sitting there and like being in that energy. And we did the same thing. I think when you visited Australia for the first time, we sat on the beach and we both went into surrogation with the ocean and then just laid there. And oh, what a beautiful experience! And I think it is. It's such a beautiful tool to be able to connect with nature in that way on a much deeper level. And I think, I've only done that a couple of times, but I actually feel like for me personally, that's all I needed to realize, like, I can actually do that without the surrogation. I can actually just be in, and it opens you up a lot more.
Yeah. You start seeing beyond the illusion. And experiencing beyond the illusion. Yeah.
I have a question, Rosie. Have you ever worked with anybody with PTSD from the military?
I haven't, and there is a facilitator on the Gold Coast who has, and there are testimonials on her website actually that it was just the most effective thing for them with really lovely outcomes, which is really nice. So yes, I know people that have worked with that, and I'm another facilitator friend who's in Brazil, I'm pretty sure. I'm wanting to say Brazil. I hope I'm not getting it wrong. He's pretty sure he's in Brazil, but he's working specifically with trauma with Psych-K, and he's just really, really creating magic with people, helping people create magic, which is really nice because there's nothing better than being able to step out of that trauma response and being able to live life without that. That constant.
And I so my military background, it was more advanced, more top end. I was a SOCA medic, like a trauma medic that worked in the special operations world. And just in that world, just the nature of it is this rapid turnover of processes and ideas as they're always evolving to the next better thing, the faster, the more effective, real things that work. Any new gadget and gizmo that comes out, if it's not effective and it doesn't actually work, they'll test it, they'll pitch it, and they'll do it very quickly. But I'm just thinking this, especially in a team environment, obviously it's a very ethical process. So you can't, like you said, do Psych-K on someone. They have to be willing and go through the process and be willing to change. But for somebody that's working with veterans, and I don't work with anybody in particular. I've done some men's group, but there are some people that have different levels of trauma that I've come across in a men's group situation. And I'm kind of starting to think maybe I should look at learning how to do this to help facilitate some of that,
Yeah.
because it's so effective. And why not, you know?
And I think you've hit the nail on the head with, I've had other people say, can we bring it into this setting? Can we bring it into that setting? Can we bring it into a school setting and teach kids? And it all sounds really good, but it's key on the partner wanting to create the change for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we can do it individually with other people if they're wanting that change, and it works fantastic. But we can't, to bring it into an organization and say we're going to do it with everybody is really tricky.
Right.
But having said that, I've done it now with a couple of big companies that wanted to create change within the company, and I've had to say to them, we can't do it like the way you think you want to do it. Like, I can't do PSYCH-K on all of your management team. It just doesn't work that way. I can do it with the people that want to create change within themselves. And the people that don't, that's fine. And it's still been highly successful because the people that want to step into that space have done so. And they've created the change. And even them, just by them expanding and changing, it's lifted the whole team anyway. So I think there's a ripple effect, isn't there?
Yes.
That happens just with one change. Yeah. So it would be amazing if you had the opportunity to work with people that wanted to create that change. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, and another question on that, I already know the answer, but for people that are wondering, can you do PSYCH-K with children?
100%. Yes. Yeah. As long as they can engage in the process, you can do PSYCH-K with children. I've facilitated with even down as young as 5-year-old. He was scared of somebody under the bed, and we just did a simple TPS, and then I asked them how they wanted it to be, and they just wanted it to be a fun place under the bed. So we just created a new belief. Yeah, so
I love that.
The dark, all sorts of things. I worked with a boy who wanted to kick his feet when he was swimming because he couldn't seem to get his feet to work, and I laugh about that because his mum brought him in for a full session, which I normally work with people for about an hour. And he came in, we just did one belief, and that took maybe 10 minutes, and that was it. He was done. He didn't want any more. He just wanted to go to the pool. So it was the shortest PSYCH-K session I've ever facilitated, and it was effective. I got a beautiful video from the mum with that little mini torpedo.
Oh, I love that. And I imagine kids would be so great to work with because they're so open. They don't have all these, even just the limiting beliefs around doing PSYCH-K, which is actually another part of PSYCH-K that I love, because we actually did this with you at some stage, which is interesting because, like you said, beliefs can shift, or sometimes our conscious mind doesn't validate the shift that's happened, because we had done quite a few sessions, and then I think it was earlier this year, I think we weren't getting clear responses or something, and Isaac actually said, I'm not sure if it's working, and I said, we've got a balance for that. And so you can just balance that you trust the PSYCH-K process and that PSYCH-K works for me, and we did it. And actually, since we did that balance, I would say, I can't speak for you, but just from what I've witnessed, you've had some of the more profound shifts using PSYCH-K after we balanced that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There's, some very good, some clarity around different beliefs I didn't even know that I had when we tested it. Like, so if you don't know what to do, there's a list of balances you can do, and going through and checking, just seeing, okay, I'm just curious about my beliefs. Check this one. Yes. Check that one. No. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I thought I believed that about myself. Yeah. And I got a weak response, and then balancing it. And then, just afterwards. Oh, what I've noticed too is after some of the last couple of sessions we've done, I'll get this really profound, like, kind of fatigue and like tiredness, and not like debilitating, but I'm like, I feel like a nap. And I've had that experience as well in the past, because the past couple of years have been some really profound, rapid changes for me. And anytime there's a big change for me or a breakthrough, yeah, my body gets zapped. Some energy is lifted off, some kind of weight has taken off, and then I rest, and then I'm good to go. Um, yeah, and we had some rapid changes around money, like right after some balances around that. We sell a product that I make at local markets. And that next weekend, we had one of, I think, our best day ever at that market. And then consistently, week after week, we were having just record days, and I love that. I love seeing that because it's not just like, oh, I'm going to use PSYCH-K to get rich, but it's like, we just want to be able to provide for our families and just get our basics covered. And we were struggling. And this was something I'm like, I feel like I'm putting all this work in, I'm stressed, and all that's just making everything else harder. It's putting weight on our relationship. And when you shift that, it's like, I'm not working as hard at it, it seems like, but I'm getting better and more results, which was very nice to see.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Like money's just money, but we stick all this stuff on it, and we've got so many, because it's such a big part of modern day life, it accrues so many limitations. For me, I didn't think I could be a good person and have a lot of money. There was that blocking me. And I grew up with an immigrant family that came to Australia as immigrants, and they had this very beautiful belief that it was a lucky country, and if you worked hard, you could make something for yourself. So I was brought up that you work hard, then you can make something for yourself. So, it sounds all these things that once we can unplug, we can make it a much more even flowing, enjoyable experience. The whole money experience can be enjoyable rather than this battleground that it can be. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've been delving a lot into the nervous system, and we just did an interview yesterday with our friend Sophie Fletcher from the States, and she's a nervous system expert among so many other things. She's such a wealth of knowledge, and it's something that I've really delved a lot into in the last year or so, and just understanding the nervous system. And for me, it's almost been like the bridge to understanding how the subconscious mind affects our body and the way that our nervous system responds, because that's how I understand it, is that it kind of starts in the subconscious mind with all these beliefs, and and our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system is all about keeping us safe and keeping us alive, and it's always going to act in accordance with those beliefs. And there's a podcast that I listen to that she's also a nervous system expert, and that's what she talks about. And she often says you can't battle against your nervous system. And it's to me, it's like you can't battle against your subconscious mind, because in that example that Isaac just gave, it's like, you're doing all this work and you're trying to do all this stuff. So in this example, you're trying to make money. But if your subconscious mind doesn't believe that you deserve money, or that you are able to make lots of money in what you're doing, it's like you're battling against it. And it's always going to be an uphill battle until you shift those beliefs. And then it's almost like, there's an allowing, and then you don't, like you said, you feel like you don't have to work so hard. It just kind of comes to you. It's just drawn to you.
Yeah. Synchronicity and flow.
Yeah.
Rather than the uphill battle. Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more thing about, we were talking about earlier about movies and TV shows in our earlier years. And now I'm starting to see how I've been conditioned willingly. Like, I had my favorite shows, but I'm like, this is such a good awareness now, and utilizing PSYCH-K specifically to decondition, now that I have the power to choose things that are, or characters in movies that I wanted to emulate as a child, but now that I know better, is not the life that I want. And I used to gravitate towards these very, very tough characters that were always lone wolves, always on their own. And like Rambo. I remember when I was old enough, my parents let us watch Rambo. And then I like literally was going to become Rambo, and went through all the training. I was like, injured, and forced myself to keep going on while injured, and all these different harrowing experiences. But Rambo was always a loner. Like, nothing ever really worked out for him. His love interest never worked out. She always either died or something else happened. It was just this tragedy life. And I lived kind of like that tragedy life for a long time. And So using a bunch of different modalities, but eventually coming to PSYCH-K and learning, how to pull apart your subconscious beliefs and just examine them and be aware, and then make an active choice. Now I can choose a life that I want, and not feel so subconsciously conditioned to just act out a movie, which I think, honestly, like a lot of men in the military do. I think for me, I joined it because of things that I would watch, and which is fine. I got the experiences that I wanted, but we're more than that, and we have more capability than just what we've seen on TV.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And how we can even try to live a life for our parents or for other people. Yeah. Sometimes just with that same conditioning.
Yeah.
I think I've worked with people that have, been doctors or lawyers, and they're not that anymore. After doing PSYCH-K, they've gone, I've only did that because my parents wanted me to do that. I actually wanted to do this, or I wanted to be an artist instead, or I wanted to do this, and now they're following what they choosing to do instead of kind of what they were programmed to think that they wanted to do, or not even that they wanted to, but think that they should do. It's interesting. It's a whole new playground once we realize that, oh my gosh, I can really start asking myself, what do I want? Because it's a big question. And sometimes we've never even asked ourselves that. We've just kind of gone through life doing what we're expected to do.
Yeah. And I think even, the way I use PSYCH-K the most now is when you are starting to step into what you want to do, I think it's inevitable that we're going to have blocks because, and again, from a nervous system perspective, which also, still relates to the subconscious mind, is that we only have the life that our nervous system has the capacity for. So when we want to step towards the things that we want and the life that we want, or the work we want to be doing, or starting a family, or whatever it may be, your subconscious mind and then your body, they're only going to let you go here. They're going to be like, well, we've kept you safe up until this point. So we're just going to stay here. So it is a process to, again, just, be able to recognize what the blocks are. And again, another thing I love about PSYCH-K is the messages protocol. So, even when I'm not 100% sure, I can just do the messages protocol, identify what it is that, if it's blocks around something or whatever, and then just see what comes up. And every time it's like, that hit the nail on the head, that hit the nail on the head. And it just allows you to then be able to step into whatever it is that you want to do, and just, slowly take step by step, because again, you can do all this internal work, but you then need to take action, which I actually would love for you to explain too, why the action steps are so important after a PSYCH-K session or after doing a set of balances. And because I often, the way I like to think about it is we're basically externalizing the internal work that we've done. But I'm sure you can explain it much better than me. So why are the action steps so important?
Yeah, for a few reasons. There's a few reasons that, so we've created the subconscious potential. So it's like we've downloaded the app on the phone. We're going to run the app to see if there's any glitches. So we think, we've created these beliefs that are helping us get to this goal, which is in the world. Yeah. So we've created the subconscious beliefs that are helping us to achieve something different in our experience of life. So we need to notice if it's been effective or not. And it might be and it might not be. Maybe what we've created subconsciously has been enough to get the momentum to create the change, but maybe it's not. Maybe we've missed something. We've missed a key ingredient, or there's another belief that we need to create that helps create that new reality. So the action step helps us consciously judge the result. And the conscious mind actually is the part of the mind that sets the goals and judges the results. So we need to engage that part of the mind for what it's good at. Judging, has it been effective, has it not been effective? So the action step does that. The action step invites the conscious mind to be part of the equation. Also, the action step, if it's an action-based goal, so if I created like beliefs that I can, start instructing internationally and teach anywhere or whatever, well, I need to maybe take some action steps to get there. Or if I create a belief that I'm going to be an Olympic athlete, I think this is an example used in the workshop. I'm not going to get there if I just sit on the sofa. I need to do the physical conditioning that's actually going to help me become the Olympic athlete. So the action is also very practical, that if you need to take action, then take the action. It is also for the conscious mind to recognize whether a change has occurred or not. And I love managing those expectations if I'm working with people or myself. Okay, I've created the potential. Is it enough to get me to that goal? Or is there something else in the way, And so the action step really helps me notice that. If it's everything is off and running, then great. I know I've done the subconscious work that I needed to do. If it's not, then I know there's something else that I'm not quite getting yet. So I get curious and explore a little bit more.
And I'm curious, Rosie, because I feel like PSYCH-K is a little bit of a hidden gem still. Like I most often get people that have never heard of it. Very rarely I'll get people that have heard of it or maybe done it in the past, like, maybe once. And I get really excited. I'm like, about PSYCH-K. Because because you train all over the world now, and PSYCH-K has its international headquarters, and is there a figure on how many people have been through workshops, and how many facilitators are there worldwide, and do we kind of know how much it's getting out now?
Yeah, I think there are those sorts of figures. They don't come to my mind very readily, but I know we asked the question. Obviously, I'd say hundreds of thousands of people have been trained in PSYCH-K. Facilitator-wise, people that are using it as a business, probably still not that many. People that are using it in their home and with their families, probably a lot more, for sure. Yeah. So I think there's so much more scope, but it is a different methodology. It's not like other, you can't come to a facilitator and say, give me that pill that's going to help me. It's such a self-responsible methodology. So people have to be ready. I've got to create the change, and then they find it, or it finds them. It's really, I think it is a hidden gem, but it's out there. People are talking about it. I talk about it. I shout it from the rooftops. Bruce has spent this year shouting it from the rooftops wherever he's been. He's been spruiking PSYCH-K. And a lot of other people too now are really talking about it in podcasts and in other avenues, so that it's out there if people are looking for it. But I think it really is, the momentum is really building. I think more and more people are getting to that point now where I've got to create the change for myself. And as soon as they get there, that's when they start looking, and that's where they find PSYCH-K. And I hear that in all my workshops. I was Googling this, I was Googling that. Bang, once they're looking, you ask for the teacher appears, when it's a bit like that. Yeah. I think it's like red pill and the blue pill of the Matrix as well. It's like when people are ready to take the right coloured pill, they find PSYCH-K.
And I think we are moving. I definitely feel a momentum building, not just with PSYCH-K, but with similar modalities, and just schools of thought around how we're meant to live. You can start to see that opening up for more people. And like you said, that's really what it comes down to. At the end of the day, freedom is about taking full responsibility for yourself. That's what it comes down to. And I think when you start to do that, I think that's when people do come to modalities like this that are, just a tool to use for you to do the healing and the work that you need to do, which is, what I love so much about it.
And I think even, as you're saying, the nervous system, and people starting to talk more about the nervous system and understanding the nervous system through through things like breath work and the vagal therapy. And, there's so much now that people are understanding, oh my gosh, there's this aspect of myself that I need to start mastering as well, that I need to start working with and acknowledging. And it's like our emotional life, that's still fairly new. We were taught to, when I was growing up, you couldn't be angry. Angry was a bad emotion, and there were good emotions and there were bad emotions. So,
Right.
I think nowadays it's a lot more acceptable to talk about our emotional life, so I think we're getting there. I think Bruce has been an amazing ambassador to really talk about even the nervous system. We can't be in stress and be in growth at the same time. They can't coexist. And this is what the nervous system studies are so good for people to study. It's like we can't fight the nervous system. We can't fight that. So we can't be in repair and growth. What is it? We can't relax and digest when we're stressed. It just doesn't happen. So
exactly.
Really important.
Yeah, I remember hearing about Bruce Lipton. I came in late to that, as far as like a lot of people have heard about him years and years ago. I'm still very new to his work, but man, the way he talked about it, because I was going through relationship troubles, a couple of years ago, and a very interesting story of just going to marital counselors and this coach and this therapy modality, and really looking for that change in myself. I was very codependent, very kind of blamed myself a lot for everything, but also took responsibility for what truly was mine. And it was just a matter of like sifting through what's mine, what's not. But I remember coming across Bruce Lipton talk about relationships and him and his wife. And he was like, basically he was just saying like, yeah, well, like we used to have our ups and downs and fights. He's like, but we just decided to change that and we don't fight anymore. Yeah. Haven't for like 10 years. And I was like, man, how do you get to that? Like, I want that life. And it just makes sense now, learning more about PSYCH-K, because it's these perceptions. A lot of it, like I still find myself working my way through those perceptions that come up. Some of them being like growing up as the youngest of four boys, and wanting my voice to be heard. And so if I don't feel heard, I've got this little hurt child inside of me, and I'm like, well, let's shift some of those perceptions now that I'm aware of them. And like I'm excited to find this in relationship.
Well, that's why I highly recommend to most people, like if because the amount of I've spent thousands of dollars on self-development courses and things like that, and trainings and things like that. I always tell people, if you just want to do one thing that will probably give you the most profound shifts, just go and do the basic workshop, the PSYCH-K workshop. Like you don't have to use it like with work or anything like that. But especially because I know we have other friends that like a couple that like, so our friend, her name escapes me now, but she's a facilitator, and her husband's just done the basic workshop, and they use it in their relationship all the time. So if they, like you have a bit of a spat, and then you go away and you do your balances, and you come back and you can actually just be your adult self and have the conversation you need to have. And there's not all this extra stuff coming with it. And so I highly recommend people, like if you're going to do one thing, like if I hadn't continued with like the facilitation training, it would have been the best money I ever spent just to use on myself, because like you said, it's very practical, it's very simple, and you don't have to. I think that's one of the reasons I love it too. It's just like a step-by-step process. It's not rocket science. You don't have to remember anything. It's all on the sheet for you. Just go through and you're done.
It is, and it's not a prescription. I mean, the methodology is a methodology, but what you want to balance for, what you want to create change is very individual to you. So I love that there's not a prescription with it, that everybody's on their own journey, and it's just so respected.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if people are wanting to do workshops, Rosi, how can they get involved and find you and when the workshops are on?
Sure. So my website is mindsalign.com.au, and I do workshops in the Gold Coast twice a year, 2 or 3 times a year. I do them in Perth, I do them in Adelaide, Melbourne, Newcastle in Australia. So that's kind of my Australia areas. And I do Hong Kong. I also do Denmark and Greece and France, and coming up soon is Croatia and Bali.
Wow.
So
love it.
yeah, so it's pretty exciting.
We should just book a workshop in one of those
I was just
countries
thinking
and
the same
have a
thing.
holiday at the same time.
I was thinking Greece. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, Greece is. I love Greece. I just love
That's
it.
amazing.
Yeah, and Bali. This is my first time in Bali. Will be in March, and I'm doing that with another. So it's going to be a special event because I'm doing it with another instructor, Martha Vargas. So we're doing it together, which is awesome. So that's exciting. So
Awesome.
just have a bit of enjoy. Really enjoy learning from each other as well, and expanding our own way of instructing. So it'll be really nice.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you told me, I think, like the first workshop, you told me all these other parts of the world that you work, like you do the training. And that was really exciting because, it's definitely spreading. And the fact that you're doing, like even now you're doing Bali for the first time, the more places pop up, you can see that there is this real demand and need for this stuff. So super exciting times ahead for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's awesome. And I think, I live in a bit of a bubble because I meet amazing people who are just wanting to grow themselves, So I think I am really blessed that I meet all the people that are wanting to change. So it's really good. But I think even though I live in a bit of a bubble, I actually think it's true that more and more people are really searching for a different way of living life, or a more authentic way of living life. And they're realizing that to have that congruence and coherence and authenticity of living, that we really need to peel away that which isn't authentic. And that's really the subconscious programs and limitations. They did an amazing, is it the Skane scale, where they really measured different emotions, and authenticity is 4,000 times stronger than love.
Wow.
Really?
That is just sensational. And to me, as an instructor, I just think, wow, I'm teaching people how to create authenticity in their lives, because they're lining up the subconscious mind with the conscious mind. So they're creating this coherence. They're creating these waves of coherence, which is authenticity, so that the power in their lives that they can create is that's huge. That's huge.
Massive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
I just wanted to ask one. Well, this is my last question. Lex can ask whatever she wants, but let's say hypothetically, if everyone's internet shut down, their phone shut down, and just went to a black screen, and then you could write one message to pop up on their keyboard, like in the Matrix, like a question, or a statement to start their journey on seeking whatever. What would that statement or question be?
So the first thing that pops up to me is free your mind. When Nemo takes takes the jump, and it's kind of the logo for PSYCH-K is free your mind. Yeah,
I love that.
I think I would love that to pop up on their screen.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rosi. It was so great to have this chat with you. And we're just
been really fun. I feel like I've been in your lounge room.
Yeah, this is good. I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, and we're both such advocates for PSYCH-K. Obviously, I work with people as a facilitator, but even Isaac just having his own experiences with it, where, such advocates for it. We really do want to spread the word. So you were up top our list of people we wanted to interview when we started this podcast together. So thanks so much for coming on. We'll have all your links in the show notes. We'll also link, I jotted down the brain imaging, I think you said, that was available, or the EEGs that were available on the PSYCH-K website. Yeah, we'll pop that link in too for anyone that's interested at looking at those. Yeah. And I will see you in March, I believe, at the next workshop.
Yes, you will. That's exciting. Yes,
can't wait.
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. We'll catch you next time. Everyone go out and look up PSYCH-K and go find a facilitator near you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was great. That was such a wonderful conversation with Rosi. My first time talking to her, actually. So it was an honor to meet her and learn from her and hear some of her story.
Yeah, I'm actually about to do another training in a couple of weeks now with Rosi, and I can't wait because just being immersed in that environment where people are wanting to make these changes and they're learning the PSYCH-K processes, it's such a beautiful container to be in. So I highly recommend anyone that is wanting to learn PSYCH-K, if all you do is the basic workshop, it's under $2,000. It pays itself off if all you're using it on is yourself and within your household with your kids or your partner or just family members. It pays itself off tenfold with the amount of personal growth and development that you get out of it. I can't recommend it highly enough. We've put all the links in the show notes to Rosi's website, which is where you can book in for trainings. Like she mentioned, she's doing them all around the world, so it really doesn't matter where you are. We've also linked what we mentioned during the episode about the science behind PSYCH-K. We've linked the studies. So if you do actually want to go and have a look at the science behind it and the brain scans, all that imaging is within the studies. And I've also put down my website, which I've just done a soft launch with. So it is under construction, but you can now register your interest. You can get in touch with me there. So that's discoverequilibrium.co. That's also in the show notes. So if you do want to work with me and experience PSYCH-K for yourself, definitely reach out.
Absolutely. Alexa is such a talented practitioner of it. She just has a way of helping you set goal statements and simplify them and make them just so effective. When you get a clarity of what you want, sometimes that's really the hardest part, is getting clear on what you want and phrasing it in a way that's effective, because you can't focus on what I don't want. PSYCH-K doesn't work that way. You focus on where you want to move into. And that's really good to learn and keep that focus. And we had a session recently that was profound, and there was some things that I have been thinking about with what I want to shift, things that are tied to generational things in my family. And the more I learn about it, there is something to the genealogy and lineage, the learned behaviors, as well as the inherited just DNA belief system. And this is cutting edge stuff. I hope people are ready for this. Your belief system is part of your DNA.
Yeah, well, we talked about this in the episode. Rosi actually said that there are studies to show that even in utero, we're responding and reacting to what's going on in our environment. So that stuff is definitely inherited. And I think they're the things that are the most unconscious, because we're not consciously aware of what happened to our grandparents and our great-grandparents and before that. We don't have any conscious awareness of that. And that is the stuff that we hold in our DNA, in our body, and in our psyche without even knowing it. So PSYCH-K can be so powerful in being able to shift the stuff that you're not even fully consciously aware of.
It's not really a practice where you get locked into it for life, where you're just always coming back. It's really just as much as you want to shift. If you're happy with how your life is going, but you have a few small things you want to tweak or perceptions about stuff, then go with that. But I'm exploring human potential. I love exploring what more my spirit can bring forth into this reality.
And for me, I actually just shared this on our podcast episode with Leanne Lipinto, but my biggest shift, the first really big shift I had from PSYCH-K was when I did my first training. And it was before I'd met Isaac, and I did a whole session on shifting my perceptions around relationships. And I knew at that point that there were definitely blocks there. Again, I wasn't 100% sure. I think some things I was aware of, and there were some things that it wasn't until I actually sat in that container and went through the session with Rosi, who's an amazing facilitator, of course. It was very simple. Like, I think it was only maybe 3 or 4 balances that I did in that whole session, maybe 4. And those 4 balances completely transformed my life in that way, because I then met you not so long after. And we haven't repeated any of the same patterns that I used to repeat in my previous relationships because of these limiting beliefs that I was holding on to, and just my perception around relationships in general had shifted. So that alone,
that's worth more than 1,000 tons of gold. Like,
yeah,
you could be the wealthiest person in the world, and if you just keep repeating shit relationship cycles, like none of that means anything. Like,
yeah,
a good relationship is worth so much.
Yeah. And there's just so many things. I think we touched on this as well in the interview, but the scope of where PSYCH-K can go, it really is, to me, it's limitless. Like there is there's like a saying about like the only boundary is like the roof you build for yourself, or I think I just might have made that
fine.
up.
I like that saying.
But it's really like you're the only one that sets the limitations really with this. So
yeah, I think Katy Perry said that. Yeah.
So relationships is a big one. Beliefs around money and business in general. Like, Rosi mentioned that she works with like corporate clients now that they want to really evolve their teams, and you can use it for that. I also used it around my surgery. So before going into surgery, I think most people can relate to that kind of nervous feeling that you get. I did it before that. And again, this was the first surgery I ever went into that there were no nerves going in whatsoever. And I just had full trust and faith that everything was going to go well. And it did. I also helped in my healing process. I've also used it for, most recently, just some things which we also discussed with Leanne Lapinto, was some things coming up around my sexuality and some healing that needed to be done. And I did 2 balances. That was it, 2 balances. And I had the most profound shift, along with, some emotional release and things like that. And again, that's also what I love so much about PSYCH-K, is that it can be used very well in conjunction with other modalities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're a practitioner, if you're a therapist, like a licensed family therapist or whatever, learning something like this and adding this to your toolkit for helping couples or helping individuals overcome certain traumas or memories or bad experiences, or helping make changes in their life, it's such a fast way to do it. And it's not fast in the way that people want, like an instant fix-it-all pill. But the subconscious mind, when you're working in that realm, it processes information extremely fast. And I think that's one of the misconceptions that people have about the subconscious. I've heard people talk about the subconscious mind very definitively, that it's like an iceberg. It's slow moving. It's like steering a big shipping container. It's very slow to move. And that's why you have to write down what you want to program in your subconscious, and you have to read it every day for like a month, and then you'll start to make a change. You can do it that way, or you can create a whole brain state and do all the things that you can with PSYCH-K and do it in an instant. I challenge you, test it out and see if it really actually works that quickly. It definitely has made some changes, whether it's in the moment fears or anxieties that are not shut down or repressed, but just released, and your perception has changed. The slower moving stuff, the generational things that I'm talking about, that I'm shifting, are poverty mentality, poverty mindset, as well as subconscious beliefs, I can't do that, or that's beyond my capabilities. There really is no limit, like you said, except the one that you place for yourself.
So in the spirit of sharing amazing modalities that can help you heal on a really deep level, next week's episode is with our friend Stephen Layer, who works with the modality called Emotion Code, which I had never heard of until I moved up here and met Steve. And it's another form of energy. It's not psychology, but it's more energy based work as well. And this focuses more on releasing trapped emotions that are held in the body. And this is actually another modality for me that has gone hand in hand with PSYCH-K, because PSYCH-K works with the unconscious mind and more at a mind level, where this I feel works more at a body level, but also it is working with the subconscious mind and shifting the perceptions that have been held, that have then trapped the emotion. So really powerful stuff.
The more you experience this stuff, the more you research and you hear the other experts talk about it, the more they're finding these things out. You can actually change your DNA by belief. So I hope you go check it out. Stay on the line for our next episode, and we'll catch you next time.